We're a dwindling population. There's fewer of us now than there were 10 years ago. Appraisers in the state of Illinois are required to take 28 hours of continuing education every 2 years. Our licenses are one of the most expensive in the state of Illinois by far. Lawyers kind of give the referrals to just one or two people that are on their list, their buddies they've known for years.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Real Producers Partners Podcast. I'm your host, David Owen with ChangeCape Web. At ChangeCape Web, we assist businesses in the promotion of their business and their services through both the use of digital marketing and conventional marketing practices. In each podcast episode, we speak with a real producer's partner to learn more about them and their business. Today, I'm joined by Shawn Foppe, owner of Shawn Foppe Appraisal, located in the St. Louis and Central Illinois area. Welcome to the podcast, Shawn.
Thank you, David.
So as we get started with the discussion, let's share with the listeners the best way to contact you.
All right. The best way to contact me would be directly via phone. It's usually the easiest. It's 618-910-2688. You can also reach me on Facebook under Shawn Foppe Appraiser. And you can reach me through my website at ShawnFoppeAppraisal.com.
Great. So let's just start with a little history lesson. How did you get started in the appraisal business?
Well, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I was taking some college classes through Lewis and Clark in Godfrey, Illinois, and ended up taking a career aptitude test. I believe I took the thing twice, and was looking for a career path. And there were some results in there that were interesting, and just basically made some phone calls and thought about a few things that I came up with, and kind of spiraled in from possibility of doing insurance claim work for automobiles and or homes to doing home appraisals.
So how long have you been doing this?
I started doing appraisals in 1998.
And we're talking about St. Louis and Central Illinois. So what's your service area?
So I cover on the Illinois side only. I cover Madison County, St. Clair County, most of Jersey County, and the southern half of Macoupin County. So Pretty much you can draw a line from Grafton, Illinois to Litchfield and down to around Freeburg, Mascoutah area.
Okay. Well, what if somebody wants you to go outside that? Can you do that?
It depends on the circumstances,
okay.
The scope of work, the type of product that it is. Depends on my availability as well. When we're really busy, it's hard to get out that extra distance and still give a good turn time. But we still do stuff that's outside of the, normal coverage area on a pretty regular basis, like Litchfield, Illinois. I'm usually up there like every other week.
Okay. So I'm assuming you do residential.
Correct. So I do residential single family detached houses, attached houses, 2 to 4 family properties. And then I also do appraisals on land. Most of it's recreational. I do not do income producing properties at all. So no mixed use, no commercial, no farmland.
All right. So who are your typical clients?
That's a great question, David. For the first 15 years plus of my business, it was mainly banks, mortgage companies, and then transitioned into appraisal management companies. Over the last 5 years, or 5 to 7 years, I've been transitioning to do more non-lender work. So I do get a lot of referrals from home inspectors, attorneys, title companies, a lot of real estate agents send me referrals. And then also, obviously through my normal networking that I do. Okay.
So your clients, how do they find you typically? Is it referral?
I would say that about 50% of my private appraisal work is referrals. The other 50% find me on doing a Google search or looking up information online, or maybe just typing something into Facebook that they're looking for an appraiser. And usually I get tagged in most of those posts.
So I imagine there's quite a few appraisers out there. Is that right? Or
We're a dwindling population, honestly. There's fewer of us now than there were 10 years ago, and probably half as many as there were 25 years ago.
really?
Yeah.
So I wonder why that is.
It's a combination of a changing landscape in the market, the education requirements that were brought into place several years ago. Don't quote me on the exact times, but it was around 25 years ago. They changed the education requirements, which made the barriers to entry very difficult.
Okay.
The overhead is a little more than most people would think, because almost every appraiser that I know on this side of the river, they're independent appraisers. So they're running single person offices, or maybe they have two people in an office that do appraisals.
Okay. So typically a small group, just a couple people. Do you do joint appraisals? Do you go out together? Or how does that work?
Nope, I'm completely independent. So personally, I don't work with other appraisers on specific projects. There's a lot of times when we get referrals, or we have attorneys that contact us appraisers, and there's estates where there's numerous pieces of property. Some of them would be residential properties, some are rentals, and then farmland. So a lot of times we'll basically farm out that work, or give the referrals, I should say, to other appraisers who do that type of work.
Okay. How do you know is it mandated? I typically don't deal in appraising, so I don't understand. When do you need one?
Well, there's a lot of times that people need an appraisal. There's a lot of times they maybe should get one and don't. So one of the things that I've been seeing way more often recently is estate properties wherein someone's passed away a few years ago, and the family's may either been living in it or renting it, and then they've made changes to the property. Recently, I did one where the owner passed away 6 or 7 years ago, and the property was never appraised for the trust. So we did a retrospective appraisal on that property dating all the way back to 2019.
Wow.
On the property. So it had changed ownership, it had changed condition. Obviously, we didn't have interior access to the property, so that made it a little less reliable, because we don't know what was there back in 2019. There's no photos or anything. I do a lot of pre-listing appraisals. Some of those are referrals from real estate agents. A lot of them are referrals from attorneys, making sure everybody covers their tails when they go to sell the family property. And then we do a lot of pre-listing appraisals. I do a lot of pre-listing appraisals as well.
So that's before the house goes on the market.
That's correct. Yes, Dave.
Okay.
So, yeah, a lot of times people will think they want to sell their house for sale by owner, or they've already talked to a real estate agent and they want to get an appraiser's opinion on what to truly expect. Or I do a lot of consulting work with these folks as well, to let them know things that might be need to be changed or fixed or altered with the property before they list it for sale.
Okay. So what makes you different than other appraisers that are out there?
Well, there's a few very good appraisers in our area. The credibility and reliability of an appraisal report comes down to experience, not only in the geographical area, but the research and diligence into looking at all the data that's available to be able to support an opinion of value.
It sounds to me like experience is a big deal.
Definitely.
And you've got some years behind you, so you would have the experience.
Yes, it's pretty rare I turn down an assignment because I don't feel comfortable doing it. It does happen. Sometimes it's because I get too busy, and I'll refer it over to one of my appraiser peers in the area that I trust.
Okay.
And sometimes it's just a really difficult piece of property, and it takes a lot of time, and we just don't, we get so backed up that it's hard to take on that assignment and still get it to a client within a definitive time period.
Sure. So what do you enjoy most? What's the best part of your job?
Oh, that's a great question. I love being active and staying busy. So as an appraiser, I spend about half of my time in the office, either preparing files, working up appraisals. The other half of my time is spent on the road. So we get a lot of time behind a windshield driving, doing property appraisal inspections, not to be confused with a home inspection, obviously, but meeting different people, and in doing the private appraisals, I meet people in all different walks of life that are, obviously facing challenges with trying to liquidate the family property or helping getting a parent or relative into assisted living.
Okay. Is there a format when you put together an appraisal for a property? Is there a format that is required or one that you like to use? How is that done?
So for lending appraisals, the lenders have their own forms that we utilize. For private appraisal work, the forms, a lot of them look very similar. There are some restricted appraisal use forms that can be used in some cases for private appraisal work that I rarely use, but they're out there.
Okay.
So everything pretty much is on a form, and then the addendum and the exhibits and the explanations and disclosures that all go in the report are what make it an appraisal report.
Okay.
So it's actually a service that you're purchasing when you do an appraisal, not a paper product.
Yeah, sure. Sure. Yeah, you don't want a book.
No.
You just like a document that outlines what you have.
Correct.
We talked about how you get your clients. What makes you different from others?
Well, I think there's a few things. Again, there's some great appraisers in our area that have some vast experience. I've been completely independent for about 13 years. So I answer the phone calls, answer the questions, do all the prep work, all the field work, and type the appraisals up. My experience in servicing multiple areas, I lived in St. Clair County for 18 years, then Jersey County for around 22 years, and then now Madison County for around 7.5, 8 years.
Okay.
So it gives me a lot of geographic competence in that direction. Also, I spent numerous years doing HUD foreclosure appraisals, and those appraisals were reviewed very deeply, and they would keep matrix on the sales price of those properties versus our appraised values. So it kept us in the loop on how accurate we were being. Obviously, the motivation of a buyer and seller can change from one situation to the next. So I've got a lot of experience doing foreclosure properties. I also have been around real estate most of my life. I've been buying and selling real estate, flipping and renovating, whichever word you want to use, on and off for the last 20 years.
All right. And you're actively doing that right now?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So we talked about what you like about it. Does the driving, the transportation back and forth, does that ever get old?
There's days like yesterday where it was about 10 hours of driving in the rain.
Wow.
But that really doesn't bother me so much. It's just with the volume of business like it's been this first quarter of this year for me and my fellow appraisers, we're under a lot of pressure to take on assignments for our regular clients and get them turned around in 7 to 10 days or less most of the time. So that's probably the biggest struggle at this time. Okay.
Do you find that you get repeat customers, or are they all new?
Most of my customers are repeat clients. My lending clients, some of them I've been doing business with for over 25 years. I take on work from referral business from real estate agents, some of them multiple times, different clients, but they'll give me referrals multiple times a year. And same with home inspectors. So I get a lot of referrals that way. I think last month alone, I had 6 referrals, at least 6 referrals from one particular home inspector.
So is your time basically one appraisal a day, or how does that work?
It's a juggling process. So typically I will spend, like I said, about half of my time in the office and half of my time in the field. So I try to get all my files prepped at least a day or two before I go out to a property, and then do the field work on those properties. There's some days where I'll do between 4 and 6 property visits in a day's time.
Okay.
Some of those are land appraisals. Some of those are just drive-by appraisals. We're not actually going into the house. So on an average, it's really kind of hard to tell. I track it, but it bounces all over the place. You know, maybe a lot of inspections for a week and a half, and then a week and a half of sitting in the office and trying to get everything worked up.
Yeah. So I'm sure every day is a little different.
Yeah. Yep. And that's part of what I enjoy about it. Every house is different, no matter what it looks like on the outside. There's no two houses completely identical.
Yeah. That is, I'm sure, something you have to pay attention to because everything's a little different.
Yep.
So what other information should we share with the listeners?
Well, Dave, I've been doing a lot of trying to do a lot of education. That's part of the reason that I joined Real Producers, to get education out there to our industry partners, being realtors, mainly attorneys and lenders, to understand what we as appraisers do, what we can do, what we can't do, and then why we have to answer a lot of questions kind of incognito or refer them back to the lender a lot of times if they have questions regarding reports. One of the biggest areas of education, I would say the two biggest areas of education right now that I've been focusing on is how to properly measure a house and get the information inputted into the multiple listing service. And then also a house has to qualify for the loan that a person's getting, regardless of whether they're loaning a dollar on $1 million house, or if they're buying it from grandma and grandpa for $50,000 and it's worth $300,000. Or if it's a foreclosure house and maybe they're buying it for $40,000, that property still has to qualify for the loan program that the buyer's trying to utilize.
Sure. So you come alongside the lender to give them information to know whether they can even lend money to the prospective buyer.
That would be one way to put it. So generally speaking, 99.9% of the time when we receive an order for a lending appraisal, we're going to go ahead and complete that assignment. It used to be if we saw some major red flags back when we used to work directly with all the banks and the loan officers, 20 years ago, they would say, hey, let's put that file on hold or let me get back with you in a couple days. Now, 99.9% of the time, regardless of the situation, they want us to go ahead and work that appraisal up, put whatever conditions we need to in that appraisal so they can turn it into their underwriter, and then they can make their decisions from there.
Okay. All right.
So there's a lot
of back and forth.
There's a little bit of back and forth. We are, as for lending appraisals, we are the eyes and ears of the lender. They're often sitting in a desk somewhere in a completely different state. And even though they may see 500 appraisals from the state of Illinois in a year's time come across their desk, they may only see one from Jersey County in 5 years. Part of our job as an appraiser is to describe what the neighborhood is like, the nuances of the market in those areas, whether the market values are stable, increasing, or decreasing. If there's a shortage of properties or an oversupply, those things all can have an effect on marketing times and market values.
Okay. So the marketplace from a real estate perspective has changed a lot. Is that true? I haven't been in the market for a long time, so
yeah,
just assuming it has.
It's our job as appraisers. I think we are an information-driven society now with everything, and appraisers are no different than that. The matrix and the quality that's available to make a credible and reliable appraisal report now, with the available MLS data and the amount of pictures they can put in, descriptions they can include, Google mapping, historical data that we can find in other sources sometimes. There's a lot of data that we have available way easier at our fingertips than what we had even 10 years ago.
Okay.
And that puts a lot more strain on the amount of information that the lending community wants us to be considering. Definitely makes a better appraisal in the long run, or should, but there's just so much information out there to review and to vet the data before we utilize it in our reports.
Yeah. The marketplace has changed a little bit, but you guys basically do the same thing. You just have more information on hand to do it.
That's correct. I mean, I think the biggest thing that we've battled as appraisers over the last 4 years has been the ups and downs of the market. Data lags. I tell everybody that data lags. I can run a report in March for a certain neighborhood or market segment, and it will show a declining or stable market. And I can run that same exact report 30 or 60 days later, and it could be showing an obvious increase or a decrease. But when we appraise a property, we're appraising it as of one specific date. So it's been complex because the trajectory of the markets and the certain market segments that are selling and that aren't selling. And then sometimes we just don't have any data on these smaller towns for months at a time for a particular segment of the market, being maybe $250,000 or less, or $500,000 or more in some market areas, and having no sales to be able to support what the market in that immediate area is doing. So then we have to reach out and look at a larger market segment, or maybe sometimes consider an entire school district, what that entire district is doing as far as supply and demand, and whether property values are increasing or decreasing on a more mass level.
Mm-hmm. So if there is the activity in a certain area is low, is it hard to figure out what the value might be because you don't have anything to compare it to?
It definitely, it can definitely make life more difficult. Some of our smaller communities might only have 50 sales in a year, and they will range in sales price from $20,000 to $500,000. So if you look at those total of sales, and find out 4 or 5 of them, listed and sold before they ever hit the market, they were for sale by owner and not necessarily exposed to the open market, they might have sold a little lower. They might have sold to family members or adjoining property owner. Their kids wanted to buy the property and be close to somebody. So the lack of data definitely makes it a little more difficult. And, the lenders, historically, everybody thinks they want all your sales within 6 months and within a year. And that is not realistic in most of our market areas. Yes, Granite City, Belleville, Alton, the larger areas, that's definitely typically possible. But we get into smaller communities of 4,000 people, we might not have had a sale between $50,000 and $100,000 in 6 months at all. So we a lot of times have to reach out and, like I said, do other research and see what the market region, not just the exact immediate neighborhood, is doing in that price segment, our market segment.
Yeah, that makes sense. So is there any continuing education that you have to do beyond, you mentioned real producers? Is there any formal education that is required for you to stay current as an appraiser?
Yes, there is quite a bit, actually. Appraisers in the state of Illinois are required to take 28 hours of continuing education every 2 years, which I believe is still among the most continuing education hours required from any profession. Our licenses are one of the most expensive in the state of Illinois by far. As an appraiser, to belong to the Association of Realtors, to gain access to the MLS, we also have to take some of their classes, and specifically their ethics class, and stay in touch with that and keep up on their education requirements. Things that may not necessarily affect us as an appraiser can still affect the industry, and we have to take that education on as well.
So you spend a little of your time just doing learning.
That's correct. Yep. And that's just the required learning. There's a lot of reading, we'll do I will usually read at least 3 to 4 articles a week from other appraisers, or following their Facebook page and looking at information in completely different market areas just to see what they're battling with or what's going good in their market areas as well.
Okay. So is there anything else you'd like to share with listeners that we haven't talked about?
I'm sure I could probably think of something here if I gave it a second. I would really encourage people to follow the Shawn Foppe Appraiser on Facebook page. Anytime I do a seminar or meetup, I highly encourage that. I do post a little bit of personal stuff on that page because obviously, I'm an entrepreneur and, we all have a life to live. So we share things here and there. You won't see me sharing pictures of somebody's house that I'm inside of unless I have their permission to share something really neat or cool. But I do post a lot of educational type information on there, which would include how to input the square footage correctly. I filled a lot of phone calls from agents asking if they can count something as a bedroom. Maybe it's on an upstairs, like a half finished or semi-finished loft or attic area, or a basement area, things of that nature. I also post content in there about some of the trajectories that we're seeing in some of the market areas. When I do seminars with local real estate offices and lending offices, I've got a presentation that's about an hour long that I do. So we have a presentation that's roughly an hour long, and then we usually have a Q&A for at least 20 to 30 minutes. And it's a really great way for me to understand what the agents are needing from us appraisers. And it's a great way for the appraisers to see what the agents are seeing in the market, what their buyers and sellers are seeing. That's probably the biggest thing right now.
Okay. You've been in your market for a long time, so your name is probably well known. Is there anybody that you'd like to meet that you haven't met?
I really would love to get in contact with more attorneys. I do a lot of divorce work, a lot of estate work. A lot of people are planning their estates or their trusts need appraisals. And oftentimes the lawyers kind of give the attorneys give the referrals to just 1 or 2 people that are on their list, their buddies they've known for years. And now that we're all busier with more going on, I would like to kind of tighten up my service area a little bit and make more contacts in the immediate area, say within 30 to 40 miles.
Well, you know how it is. Call who you think of.
Yep.
If you're not thought of, they won't call you.
Yep. Regular social media content has definitely been a huge plus over the last 6 to 12 months for me.
I would imagine so.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't have any more questions. If you don't have anything else you'd like to add, I guess we'll end at this point.
All right. Sounds great, David. Thank you for having me on. Have a great day.
Appreciate the conversation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.